This is my second attempt at filming this rant. The first time I filmed it, not only was I deeply emotionally raw, but I also had a smudge of what I believe was soot, or ashes on my nose, which I didn't notice until we went back to edit the video. So I couldn't move past that, or how exceedingly upset I sounded while I was ranting. I do try to be emotionally vulnerable with the people who view our channel, with our students, but that was a bit far. So this is my second attempt. As a reminder, our rants are different than our other content. The Ask a Witch videos are extremely biased. They answer a question specifically from the perspective of the practitioner that teaches for Sanctum of the Craft, how they do something. So those are very intentionally extremely biased. We attempt to keep the rest of our content as unbiased as we can, keeping in mind that there is no such thing as unbiased research, and certainly no such thing as unbiased presentation of research. But the rants are extremely biased. We started the rant series because I tended to go off on little rants in the middle of other content, and this somewhat prevented me from doing them because it gave me a place to take that content. I want to thank the student who recently emailed us asking us for a bibliography, which if you're watching this, you will be getting that. And also thanking us for posting the rants and telling us how much our content has meant to you over the years. That was very, very needed. I really appreciated it. I want to continue by actually getting into the rant instead of spending multiple minutes avoiding talking about it. If I want to avoid talking about it, then I shouldn't be filming this at all. I've started teaching the crisis preparedness course again. This is, oh gosh, I don't even know the number, the umpteenth time I've taught this content. The very first time that I constructed the course, it was for a spell circle that I was a member of and one of the primary instructors for. And then over the years, as that circle grew and evolved and changed and became a collective that did everything from volunteer efforts to feed the homeless to protests that we put on, I taught this course for them too. And I've taught this course for other collectives. I've taught this course online. I've taught it in person. I've taught it in chunks as seminars. I'm going to be teaching it again as chunks, as seminars for a mutual aid center. I've been teaching this course for decades in various iterations. Sometimes it's focused more on acute crisis, so protests and riots, hurricane relief. Sometimes it's focused more on long-term instability, creating community gardens, recipes for feeding a crowd. Soup for the Revolution was a very popular one for a while at the community center my partner and I ran. We've been teaching this course for decades now. It was one of the very first courses I ever started teaching. Which brings me to my rant, which is that I feel like I've failed many of my students, and in particular, I feel like I've failed many of my cis male students. And I've been really gnawing on this, and it has been gnawing on me for months now, as we constructed the most thorough, in-depth version of this course that I've ever taught. And as we've brought on new instructors and new volunteers to help us teach this course series. I've been thinking about the very first group that I taught, and sort of the next group and then the next group, and the lessons that I've learned along the ways, because I want to improve the content. I want to tweak it and adjust it and make it more approachable, better cited, more informative. And so I've been just thinking about all the times I've taught this before and all the people I taught it to. Many of the students that I've had who have attended courses on preparation for acute crisis and long-term instability have talked about their favorite movies, TV series, books, their interests outside of the program, the things that drew them to the program in the first place, the things that inspired them to want to learn what I was teaching. And so many of them were extremely interested in anti-fascist inspirational messages where the hero is explicitly fighting fascism. Now, that might be Nazis. There were quite a few of my students who were really into like Captain America, for example, who overtly fights not only Nazis, but like super Nazis in the form of Hydra. One of them literally had Captain America's shield tattooed on him. Or like fascists, but in space. So Star Wars. Nazis, literal stormtroopers, but in space. And they would talk during the community togetherness portions of these courses, because we did communal meals with the collective. We did campouts with the collectives. So there was a lot of chatter about what they would do if they were in the place of the protagonist in the anti-fascist stories that they loved so much. They would talk about how they would band together with their community and create a resistance movement, and the kind of supplies that they would get together, and the kind of infosec and opsec they'd use. And heck, we debated everything from, the usefulness of flash paper notebooks to what kind of cordage it was best to learn how to make. And some of these students were students of history as well, not just history that I taught. One of them was obsessed with World War II history, and specifically the history of resistance movements. One of my cis male students, was absolutely really into survivalism media. So things where there'd been a horrible disaster, zombies and plagues, and people had to band together and survive. Really liked the show Jericho, for example, because it shows an entire community having to work together to survive. He really liked watching that. And we would talk about the pros and cons of different methodologies, how inspired they were by different characters' decisions, how much they disliked some of the decisions made by characters, and what they would do differently. And now they're not doing anything. It's not all of them. I have some cis male students who are still doing the work, still trying to fight fascism. Some of them work with the homeless and unhoused. Some of them have made their own offshoots and have circles of their own that they're training, collectives of their own that they're training. But the vast majority of my cis male students fell down the alt-right pipeline. As they researched how to prepare to fight fascism, they became supporters of fascist movements. and I lost them. One of the reasons why our course focuses so heavily now on misinformation and disinformation, radicalization and de-radicalization, is because I lost those students to that messaging. And it targeted the cis male students specifically. And the students who resisted the most, who were assigned male at birth, no longer identify as cis male. Like, I made a list after I was gnawing on this, and it was gnawing on me. And the ones who are doing the most work with collectives in their communities don't identify as cis male anymore. They did when I was teaching them, but they don't anymore. The messaging has been so viral and so effective at contagion that nothing that I could teach reached them, despite the fact that they grew up wanting to be a member of the resistance. Their heroes were members of the resistance. They literally tattooed themselves with symbols of the resistance, and it still took them. Because I failed them, and they failed me. And now they're failing themselves, and they're failing their communities. And I think that their names are like a weight around my neck. So many things in my life that could have broken me, drowned me, kept me from my path, I've turned into the inspiration to keep walking instead. This is hard to do that with, because I've never understood what the point of any of it was if it wasn't to serve. And this feels like a way I have failed to serve my community, because there's a subset of it that I keep losing. And I'm trying to teach myself how not to lose them anymore. But it is definitely a work in progress. The misinformation and disinformation campaigns that have tugged people down that alt-right pipeline are so effective that they've turned these former students of mine not just into class traitors, traitors to their community, traitors to my teachings, but traitors to themselves. They have betrayed their childhood selves. They've betrayed the star guiding them down their own paths towards the person that they could have been. And I'm aware of the messaging online. Fuck them. Let them die. Let them burn. I find myself at 3 o'clock in the morning wondering if there's any way to keep the door open for them too. I will prioritize everything else. But should they wake up tomorrow and realize what they've become, I hope someone will have kept the door open, because we are going to need to take back some of the people who have been stolen from our communities, or we will not have enough people to resist. People can change. Because they certainly did. I can just hope that eventually they might change back. Until then, I will keep trying to find a way to turn this into something that inspires rather than breaks. It's an ongoing process. I don't have a hopeful message at the end of this one. Only that I will keep trying. Be safe out there, everyone.